Hello and welcome to my stretch boot cover tutorial. I'm going to show how to make a simple boot cover using stretch fabric and a base shoe that you can slip on. First, you're going to need to cut out basically this shape. I would do a mock-up first to get your shape. A few things you'll need when you're sewing is make sure that you have a microtex needle so you don't poke giant holes in your vinyl, a Teflon foot, and also make sure that you are sewing with a stretch stitch depending what your machine has. So I've sewn up the side seams here. And once you sew up your side seams, it's going to be a little sticky, but flip it inside out, no, it's right side out, and try it on, make sure it works first. Even though I did a mock-up, the first run I made of this boot didn't quite fit because the vinyl didn't stretch as much as my mock-up fabric. So make sure that it fits before you go any farther. Luckily this try did fit really well. I'm actually trying it on with my base shoe as well to make sure it's going to cover everything I want covered on my base shoe. Notice again that it is a shoe that I can slip on really easily. Another thing to note that you'll want to do, sorry this is dark, but I forgot to show up earlier, what you'll want to do is actually notch and clip the curves. So you notice I did the toe, the part that I'm cutting right here is the front of the ankle. Also you want to do the back of the ankle, just because it's to make everything lay flatter and smoother. So the next part that I'm going to do is a band for the top of my boot. If you're doing a thigh-high boot cover, I really recommend doing elastic at the top just to hold it all together, and that's what I'm doing here. Is this particular one is a thigh-high. If you're doing just a knee-high or calf boot cover, you don't really need one. But if you want to do a casing for elastic at the top, this is how you do it. So I'm starting with this strip, I'm folding in half, sewing it down, and then I'm going to put my elastic through it. Make sure it's nice and snug so it'll stay up. Thigh highs are difficult to keep up. A little two-sided tape also helps. So I put the elastic on a safety pin and pull it through the casing and then sew it shut. This white foot you see here is the Teflon foot. It helps keep things from sticking when you're sewing on top of the vinyl and is just generally really awesome. I definitely recommend getting one. So now that I have a tight stretchy tube, I'm going to sew that on the top of my boot cover. Again, this is optional. It depends on the design of what you're making. Okay, now that that's done, I flip it up and there, doesn't that look nice? Okay, next thing you want to do is try on your boot cover inside out on the wrong foot. So if it's my left boot cover, I'm going to put it on my right foot inside out. It just works that way. So you're going to mark the sole of your shoe, and up until now it's been symmetric, like the right side or the inside of my shoe is the same as the outside of my shoe. But if you notice on your shoes, they're not exactly the same. You have an arch on the inside and it's a little bit different. So you want to make sure you have it on the opposite feet since it's inside out. And go ahead and mark where that shoe is ending, or right where the shoe is ending on the edge of the fabric where you want it to be. If your shoe has a different design sole like this one does and like my plug suit does, see how it has the sort of mark on the heel, then your line might not be exactly straight. But go ahead and mark that, and then here I'm adding a seam allowance to it. I measured out 1/2 inch seam allowance. 1/2 inch is my favorite seam allowance. I just use that for pretty much everything, unless the pattern tells me otherwise. And I'm also marking out, I'm tracing out the pattern as well as the sole, because I used a separate piece for the very bottom. And to make those match up, again, you have to add a seam allowance. The tracing paper is really handy for doing that. So I mark where my seam is and then add 1/2 inch to either side. Okay, next you're going to have to make the sole of it, or the bottom piece. So take your base shoe. Again, here the wedge makes this pretty easy to do. I'm going to trace around the bottom of it. And there it is. Again, you would want to add a seam allowance to that before you cut it out of fabric. And that's, again, just adding that 1/2 inch all the way around on all sides. Here I am actually pinning it to my shoe just to make sure that it's going to work. Let's see if I need to tweak it. And luckily it did work pretty well. Okay, so now that I know that piece works, I need some way to get my shoe in and out. So I'm cutting a hole or a line down it at the widest point of the shoe. So now I'm going to sew my actual piece on here. Notice now it's red and all matches. I'm going to sew the little front piece, or pin the little front piece down. Just a note with vinyl, when you're pinning, if you use pins, make sure it's within the seam allowance. If you noticed earlier, I was using clips and not pins, but here I really need the stability of the pins. Just make sure it's not poking through where you're going to see it. Everywhere that I'm poking a pin is going to be on the inside of my costume, so I don't care. Okay, now I'm going to pin the back piece, and the pieces overlap a little bit. That's perfect. This is one of the trickiest parts. Making sure everything lines up. Get it as close as you can. Okay, now when you've got everything, this is again a tricky part. I pinned it around the shoe to make sure it's all stretched out and it's how it's going to fit, but I'll have to unpin it just a little bit to squeeze my shoe out. So carefully I pull the shoe out, and then I can go and sew that 1/2 inch seam allowance all around. Again, very carefully. Very carefully go around all those curves. You might want to baste first, which is when you do really wide stitches, and then go over it with a stronger stitch or stretch stitch. And it looks sort of like some kind of weird sock right now, but it's going to be beautiful in a minute. So flip it inside out again. Or right side out. Flip it right side out. Now I've actually got a thigh-high boot cover. Let's see how there's that gap there? I can actually squeeze my shoe into that gap. This could be easy or difficult depending on the shoe. This is a really clunky shoe, so it's kind of tricky to get in there. Just to note, this method really only works with stretch fabric. I would try to do it with the non-stretch fabric. Not that you can't make boot covers with non-stretch fabric, but this particular method and the ways I'm showing you here definitely recommend stretch. And it looks like that when you're all finished. Okay, here's a picture of my finished boot covers. There is a step that I forgot to take any video of or photograph, but I added on rubber soling onto the bottom. So what I did is, if you remember when I traced out the sole to make the fabric piece on the bottom, did the exact same thing, but I traced it onto a sheet of rubber soling and cut that out. And then I glued it onto the bottom using caulking. Really great stuff. The tub and tile bathroom caulk. It holds really well. That way you have both traction on the bottom of your feet and you're not going to wear holes in it when you walk around at the convention. So that's the last step I really recommend doing, and then your boot covers should last you a while. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed my video, please like, subscribe, and share. And if you have any questions at all about making boot covers or this video, please just leave your comments down below and I will answer them. Bye-bye!